welcome back to the latest edition of The Doctor Will See You Now. If anybody is familiar with Dr. Noir's greatest passions, you will know that today's consultation actually ticks all the boxes. We have a debut novel, we have a debut novel in translation, and we have a debut novel in translation from one of the Nordic countries. I couldn't ask for more. And I have to tell you, this heartstopper of a novel, highly recommend to you. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Helene Flood to the consultation. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great pleasure to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to come on and to discuss with us The Therapist. I'd like to just start off by asking, when did the idea of you writing a crime fiction novel, when did that start to emerge?
Well, I've always been a fan of crime fiction, and especially I used to read these old Agatha Christie novels that we had I used to have in my family cabin from the 60s, you know, these old paperbacks that had been read 1,000 times, and we read them every Easter. So I've liked to read it for a long time, and I also like to write, but not necessarily crime fiction. And then I was on maternity leave. I had a little baby, and the little baby didn't want to sleep unless someone was in an absolutely dark room with him, lying next to him. So no, scrolling on the cell phone, no reading a book with a little flashlight, just total darkness, which gives you a lot of time to think. And maybe weirdly, this was the story that came when I was lying next to my child. But I think there is something about the situation that you're in when you just have had a baby, that you're very, alert to all the things that could possibly go wrong. And so this was the story that came to me, the story of someone disappearing, and like, what would that be like? Not for a trained police officer, but for a normal everyday person like me. What would that be like if someone that I love disappeared?
A couple of things that you mentioned there. First of all, I absolutely adore the fact that new little being that came into your life was the sort of like the Kickstarter of this idea, albeit a very dark idea. Maybe because he made you be still in the darkness that this happened. I just think, a baby's born and an idea is born. Those two things together. I think that's lovely. So from that idea emerging in the darkness to the book appearing on the shelves, or the ebooks appearing in Norway, how long was the process?
So what I did, I had this idea, and then I wrote for like half a year, I think. And then because life happened and work happened, I had to put it away for, I think, almost a year. And then when I took it back, I had about 70%, I'd say, of the script written. And I knew what was going to happen in the end. And so I read through it, and I thought, like, oh, yeah, maybe it kind of works. But also, I'm going to change the ending. Like, I'm going to completely flip it around.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So, and now I'm really happy that I went with that gut feeling. So I wrote the last 30%, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to send it to a publishing house or not. I spent some time just deciding that, and then I thought, I'm just going to send it and just see. And then they liked it, and we worked, I think, about a year with it in editing and so on, and getting feedback, and then it was out.
Brilliant. And I think I love your modesty. Not only was it out, but it won Best Norwegian Crime Debut did it not?
It
Last year.
did.
Yeah, I love your
Yes.
modesty. Yeah, and it also won, which again for me is absolutely wonderful. The Icelandic prize for best novel in translation. So
Yeah.
seriously, viewers, this is a novel that you need to get your hands on. It's hot property, um, and there's again, we can't give anything away, but I think for me, you have written, we'll start at the end. No, you have written, and that swap, I'd be really intrigued to know how it was originally, but you can't tell me that because
When the recording is off, I'll tell you.
then you tell me. Yeah, but honestly, that is an ending that I don't think I've ever read an ending like that. Yeah, yeah,
Glad to
beautiful,
hear it.
beautiful, beautiful. It pleased the doctor very, very much. Anyway, so it comes out in Norway. It's a huge success. Norwegian crime fiction, I mean, you know, it's known world over. It's almost like if you want to read good crime fiction, I mean, for people from Britain or English speaking people wanting to read crime fiction in translation, it's one of the go-to places. Get yourself, Karen Fossum, Jo Nesbo. It's where you go. So how does it feel for you now, being part of that, and Gunnar Stolzen? How does it feel for you to be part of that amazing family of authors?
I mean, it's like you say, it's great company to be in. We also have a very active crime fiction environment in Norway. Like we have festivals, and you will meet all these people that you just saw on TV before, or on the what do you call it? The jacket of
Yeah, the book. Yeah, the book jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, it feels really amazing, and I think. As a debut author, you get a lot of pull also from that environment. It's a lot of people who are very friendly and forthcoming, and who will help you in that way. And also the world, as you say, knows the Nordic noir. So yeah, no. So I think it's great. It's a lot of support in that.
That's lovely, and I think, gosh, given these crazy times that we're in at the moment, I think it's even more you know of an amazing happening that your book, has gone from Norway and out into the world, and the noise that is around that publication is
Yeah,
quite phenomenal.
it is
Now,
amazing.
before I ask you about it becoming then the therapist, what is it called in Norwegian?
Terapeuten.
Thank you. So, um, you mentioned, in your childhood reading Agatha Christie, and you mentioned about that Easter celebration of crime fiction. Now, how was it in Norwegian?
Oh, the name of it?
The celebration.
Yeah, påskekrim.
So, I
Good
mean,
pronunciation.
yeah, thank you. So even in your adult life and before, and before being a published crime writer, did you and your family, did you celebrate? And presumably you're going to celebrate now because you have to.
Now I kind of have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we always go to, so it's this tradition that started, I think, with a very successful publicity campaign for one book that,
Yeah, it was on a milk carton, wasn't it?
yeah, and in the paper, I think, where it said like a big train robbery happened, and it was the advertisement, but people thought it was really happening, and
Yeah.
it was in the 60s or so, so people would call on the phone and be like, what happened? I know someone who was on that train, are they okay? And since that, Norwegians have really just loved to take crime novels with them. We often go to the mountain in Easter, so we bring crime novels with us, and they always show crime series on TV. And yeah, in my family we also do that, not religiously, I would say, but still we like to do that. We like to watch these the crime series on TV, and then we call our friends, or we meet in the ski track, and we say like, who do you think did it? I think
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. And so, well, I wonder if people, since your book has been published, whether people have written to you and said, in that kind of discussion, well, we think such a body did it. But
Yeah, that happens. It's very funny to follow when people are like, I'm halfway in, I think this has happened. And I'm like, okay.
Keep going, you'll find out. Anyway, so to it becoming this glorious publication that we are now able to enjoy, again, how long, how did it happen? What was that process?
Yeah, so I got an agent to sell it to foreign publishing houses, and it was, I think, in the book convention in London.
Yeah.
That it was sold to Macclehose Press, and then COVID happened, so it was supposed to come the summer of 2020, and then I mean, nothing happened like we had planned the summer of 2020. So it's been quite a long wait, I'd say, for it to come out. I'm really excited that it's finally happening, and then a little bit sad that I can't be there because travel restrictions, but hopefully eventually.
Exactly. And you know, there's that, I don't know if the saying exists in Norwegian, but the idea that, you know, good things are worth waiting for.
That is a saying.
Yeah. So we, you know, we've had to wait, you know, a year for this book, you know, that is out this first week of July in the UK. And we'll have to wait to meet you face to face. But yeah, we will. You know, I know we will. It'll be great to be able to, you know, to see you over in the UK at the festivals there.
It's gonna, yeah, and for me, it's a strange feeling that the book is traveling now. It's out there. It's coming to new countries, and I'm sitting here. You know, I would like to be out and experience it.
Yeah, but it will happen. Maybe with the next book, because I'm going to ask you what towards the end what's next. But enough of that for now. The Therapist. So the Therapist is your main protagonist in the book, Sarah. Would you like to just give us some background to Sarah?
Sure. So she's a young psychologist. She's around 30 of age, and she lives with her husband Sigurd, who's an architect, in this old family house of Sigurd, where there are things in the walls. We could say there's a lot of history in the walls in this house. And they're going to refurbish this house. And as so many house refurbishing projects, this one has also come to a standstill. And they're living in this house where nothing really works. And you have the image of what it's going to look like, but it's just been standing still for so long that Sarah is starting to lose faith a little bit that it will ever be finished. And along with the refurbishing, the marriage is also kind of at a standstill, or certainly things are not what it used to be. And in this house, she's also receiving her patients. She's a child and adolescent psychologist, so she has patients coming to her office, and she's very, you know, she's always in her house. She doesn't leave too much. She's kind of enclosed in that house a little bit. And more perhaps as the story progresses. So that's, should I say a little bit about what happens, or?
In a minute, but I wanted to ask you first of all, because Sarah is that psychologist, and I've read that you yourself are of that profession, and I wondered to what extent, you know, did you draw on, you know, on your years of experience to be able to both create the character but also create what the book is about?
I think probably to a certain extent, yeah. I think that my fascination for the dark sides of human nature, to a certain extent, comes from my training and my experience as a psychologist, and then also probably I went into that profession because I find this so fascinating. But I don't work as a therapist. I work as a researcher, which is, I think, why I was able to use this subject to write, because the therapeutic room is, of course, a very secretive place. It's very also legally
Yeah.
guarded.
Yeah.
And so for me to write, because I'm writing quite a bit about Sarah's patient as well, I take the reader into the room and write about the therapy. And this was something I really wanted to do because I think it fits so well with the thriller genre, because it is this very secretive room where you're not supposed to have access. And then it's also a room where you're supposed to come with your darkest, deepest secrets, and you're going to be totally truthful with this stranger who's sitting there and really spill everything. And then we know that people so often lie in therapy. And I think it's something that really works with the plot of the book and what I wanted to investigate writing this notion of what is true, what is a lie, why do we lie, why yeah.
Yeah. And alongside that, in our closest relationships,
Yeah.
that idea of those people that supposedly, whether they be soulmates, whether they be the person that you were meant to love for the rest of your life, all that kind of thing, that how much do we know the person that is sharing our space?
I think it's something really profoundly threatening about that notion that perhaps we don't know everything. I mean, you really cannot know, I think, someone else to the bottom of their soul. There will always be things that we keep from one another, and it's probably good. I mean, it could be scary to but this idea that you're my soulmate, we wake up in the same bed every morning for 20 years, and there might be things that you still hide from me. This is very threatening. And then I think a thing that is perhaps even more scary is this notion that perhaps you kind of know, but you choose to look away from it because this is what you need to do to preserve that relationship. Like, what are you willing to do to preserve it? This is fascinating, I think.
Yeah, that if we don't speak about it, if it's not mentioned, then it doesn't exist.
And we don't think about it. I know that there is something there, but I'd rather not ask about it because I don't know what you would answer and where that will bring us.
Yeah, and and at various points in the novel, that very thing that our main protagonist Sarah, she does exactly that when she receives certain pieces of news, or where something might have happened, or she goes through that process of that, I'm going to fill my mind with other stuff. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do that. As a professional, do you think Sarah is good at what she does?
I think she could be, but I think I don't know how you do it in the UK with when you're a young therapist, but then in Norway you often have supervision. Like, you would often have an elder or a more experienced advisor that you would go to, and you will talk about your patients, and that person will also help you talk about your process. And I think one of Sarah's big problems is that she doesn't have that. She's all alone, professionally as well as personally, in a way. And that's,
And at the beginning of the book, that idea of she makes that choice, doesn't she? I love it. It says, with the stroke of a pen, she just cuts herself off from that possibility of speaking through cases in a professional way, and speaking through her own process. She loses that totally. And I wondered in that, was there a sense of not doing things in the way that she should have done?
I think the thing that unlocked Sarah's character for me was to just realize how she's very lonely. She's a very lonely person. And then she's also kind of a difficult person a little bit. Like, she chooses to be alone. She rejects her husband's friends' wives. She doesn't want anything to do with. She has a very she's high standards, and not everyone can yeah, she's a little bit difficult that way. And she also does that with her colleagues. Like she works in a clinic where there are plenty of people, as you should do when you're kind of young in your career, perhaps, or you should make sure that you have a professional environment. But Sarah finds it troublesome, and she just decides, I want to be on my own. And I think it fits her character because she likes to be alone, and she is a little bit how do you say it, like she trusts herself, and she doesn't want anyone else interfering, but then she also finds herself in this very lonely position professionally, that she is sitting there with all these patients, and she has no one to discuss it with.
And so, and then because I don't think we're going to give anything away if we talk about Sigrid's disappearance, because it's on the back of the book, so we're not it's fine. And just in thinking about that, so a husband, the idea is that he's going out to the cabin in the woods, and he sends texts to say he's safe, he's got there, and then his friends text and say, where is he? And he's not got there. Da, da, da. Where is he? And I just wondered, in this idea of him, his disappearance, is that yet, is that breaking off yet another connection? She's broken off. She's decided to break off the connection with those colleagues, but now, I mean, that loneliness is growing ever greater.
Sure, yeah. And I think she has been lonely in this marriage, and then as Sigurd disappears with this inconsistency where he says he has safely arrived, he's with his friends, everything's nice, and then the friends say, no, he never came, we haven't heard from him, where is he? And she's thinking, well then he must have lied. And so he leaves with a question mark, and there's something really lonely about that too, that this marriage that you thought you were in was maybe different from what you thought it was.
Because of course the disappearance, then she reports this to the police, and I very much liked the male police officer. Is it Gerderson? Gunderson. Can you just describe him a little bit for the viewers?
Yeah. So he's also someone who's kind of set in his own way, and so in a way they go up against each other a little bit. This therapist and the police investigator is investigating her life. He's kind of cut the small talk type, very direct, very smart. And he has, but I think he has levels to play, and he plays. We don't know how conscious he is on when he is being nice to her and when he is more, aggressive, going forward pretty hard. But certainly he kind of changes his tactic, and then she is, yeah. I imagine it as this kind of. There's almost maybe a little bit of therapy in that relationship as well.
Yeah, because I think his insight and his self-awareness, as well as in his profession, of saying, we sometimes go along a certain tack, when really if we were being truly professional, we'd go along that tack, but we'd go along other tacks as well. We would look elsewhere. We wouldn't just go with what is it, confirmation bias. That's the thing that I learned from the book. Thank you. Confirmation bias. Yeah. And again, I think it's a theme that runs through the book as well. Yeah. Now, you're not allowed to say who or why, of course, but there were parts in this book that really disturbed me, and there was some classic. I don't know if I'm allowed to call it gaslighting. Where things are happening, where Sarah's living. Can you give us one example of that?
Sure. So Sarah is living in this half ready, half not ready house where where Sigrid disappears from, and then there are objects that disappear, and she's thinking, wasn't it there before? I think it was there before. I kind of remember seeing it, but I'm not completely sure. And then suddenly it reappears, and so this is happening quite a bit, that she comes into her house and she has this feeling that it's not home, you know, it's not safe, someone might have been there. She can't be completely sure. And then she is also starting to wonder if she's losing her mind.
Yeah, and again, I mean, perfect for a book of this nature, but that idea of questioning everything. I mean, her whole life, her frame of mind. You know, how do you think? Because I think we're allowed to say she makes it to the end of the novel. I think that's good. You know, yeah. How do you think she manages to maintain, some equilibrium?
Well, I think she's under quite hard pressure during the course of the novel, and it's also very focused on memory, and then so she's someone who is taking some pride in her very good memory, that she can remember stuff almost, photographically, and then as these things that we talk about starts to happen, and she's starting to think, did I see it? Didn't I see it? I was so sure I saw it, but now I'm not sure anymore. And she's starting to feel like she might be losing her memory. And I think there is something, who are we without our memory? Like all our experiences, the things that we think about ourselves is founded in our memory. And so it's this sense for her that she can't trust her senses, she can't trust her memory, she can't trust, her perceptions of the world anymore. And then what are you left with?
Yeah, because
So,
if they're called into question, then the follow on is that your very being, your very existence is then, did it happen? Did it not happen? Who am I?
yeah,
I believed I did this. I believed I was, but maybe I wasn't. What?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then she's going into this extremely demanding situation, as it would be for any of us, but with her toolbox sort of more and more empty as the novel progresses. She has very few tools to deal with this situation. And then how she manages to, or if she manages to keep the equilibrium, it's I'm not entirely sure, but she also has this very analytic side, I think, and she also uses her profession to try to say, okay, I can see that I'm starting to feel more and more stressed, but I'm in a stressful situation. I must now remember what does stress do to a person. What did I learn in university about that? So she has this, that as a kind of tool that she has with her.
I really, it's one of one of the aspects of the book again that I really took a lot of pleasure from. It's almost like following her thought paths, and it's almost like you would have, had you been presented with whatever facts of things that had happened, that you would have gone along those paths and thought, well, could it be this? Or if I've done this, was that happening then? Why am I feeling this? How do I combat this? And it's quite, I don't know, you feel like saying, yeah, come on, Sarah, come on. Do it, get that right path, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the house, the half finished house, I like that. Did you have a specific place in mind? Did you model it on something? Is there a half finished house in your family?
It's modeled on maybe 3-4 different houses. So in a way, it's something that I put together in my mind, but I could draw you a really specific map of every, like I know exactly what it looks like. But it's probably something that I've built from various existing houses.
Because that sense of it, something really, I think, very typical. So Sigurd is, he's the architect. It's his profession. And yet look at the state of where they're living. It's a bit like, the plumbing in a plumber's house is usually, apologies to any plumbers who might be watching, but that idea of normally what you are best at when it comes to implementing that in your own space.
Mhm. And I think the same goes for Sarah, who's the professional in helping people sort out their mess, and she has some pretty large blind spots when it comes to her own mess.
Mm. And now there's an element of the novel as well, which I think you use really effectively, and it's that of how technology, modern technology, in police investigations just make it so different,
Mm.
and other aspects of technology that are part of the storyline. Are you fond of modern technology?
I think, like many of us, I have a sort of love-hate relationship with it.
Mm,
I think it's a great. I mean, I think a lot of these social media, it's a great way to get in touch with people, keep in touch with people. I don't know if it's like that in the UK, but in Norway and in some of the other countries where my book has come out, it's the book environment is very heavy on Instagram.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's something that I've been using more and more professionally as well. And I love how people send me pictures of themselves reading my book and getting in touch with me to just like say, hey, I'm from, Uruguay, and I just want to tell you I really
It's
loved
a
your
really
book. And
cool
it's
book.
this amazing feeling, especially now that we're all staying at home,
Yeah,
you still have this feeling like, wow, someone in Uruguay is reading my book. But yeah, I see many problematic sides with it as well. And yeah, the personal data side of it. The yeah. On the other hand, as a crime writer, it's a lot of opportunities. It's yeah, lots of
yeah.
ways you could follow people.
Well, yeah, I think that's the whole idea of surveillance.
Mm.
Being able to track where cars have traveled, or people with their mobile phones. It's
And
like
I think it's psychologically interesting also how quickly people give away their data. It's like, oh, I want to see a funny picture of that myself as a cat. I'm gonna just, yeah, you can access all my data. It's something about human nature in that as well, I think.
yeah, this idea of reveal and share,
Mm.
and connect, because I think it's, is it not the contemporary way of connection, and even more so with COVID.
Yeah.
It's, normally, yeah, I mean, in former times you might have, had people round for coffee and said, oh look, here's our photographs of our holiday
Mm.
wherever. Well, now people aren't coming around for coffee, so I'll just send you a picture of where I went.
Mm.
Not that we're
Mm.
going anywhere at the minute, or here's pictures of my garden. How are things developing? But what I love about it in this book is again, the way the police officer talks about it, and how he says it's changed his profession, and
Mm.
and how, again, it's tricky, isn't it? Because more and more CCTV images. Are we ever private? Are we ever not? But in solving mysteries and
Mm.
crimes.
Yeah, and then the phone is not a physical part of your body, so it is entirely possible to leave your phone and go somewhere else. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that you are
But yeah,
with your phone. So
except those of us who really wouldn't ever be anywhere without it. Yeah, that's a huge confession. No, I am trying to, you know, wean myself off this. So I presume you are extremely pleased with the way that this novel has been received. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely, it's been an adventure.
yeah, without a doubt. And what is wonderful is that adventure, it's still ongoing, and the momentum that is behind it. I have no doubt that, both with the therapist and anything further that you write, I know, that your name will be appearing regularly. Um, and without wishing to rush on too much, because, I'm sure people, would like to get through the therapist before I ask you what's next. Because the truth of the matter is it not, that the therapist was part of your life. It was published, and but its journey keeps going. However, I presume you're on with a new book. I hope you are.
In fact, it was just published in Norway a month ago, my second book. So yeah, so more is coming.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
Are you allowed to share?
I'm allowed to share, I presume. I can share. Yeah, no, so the next book, it's called The Lover in Norwegian. It was also previously called The Neighbor, so I don't know which one you're going to fall down on in the UK. But it's a story of a woman who's approaching 40. She has a husband, she has 2 kids, she's living in this kind of posh neighborhood in one of these apartment buildings. It's like a house, but it's 4 apartments in that house. And this is also kind of old house where you can hear your neighbors walking, you kind of hear the squeaking in the staircase. There are places you can be where you can hear the conversations of the people who live next door to you. And of course, these neighbors also have connections that are not known by everybody. And one of them is a lover. And yeah, and then a neighbor is killed. And who did it?
Who did it? Who did it? Wow, sounds wonderful. I love that notion of, again, what is secret, and what do we think is secret but isn't secret. Those layers of what is known and what is not known, and who knows it.
And what do we know? Only like we see something of the like contour of it, and we look away.
Yeah. Or we presume that something might be, but it isn't necessarily what it is. And I have to say, and it brings us really back lovely to the therapist, because there's somebody that we've not been able to talk about, because if we did, it would give too much away. But I think in the therapist, you do this for us. You present us with a character who isn't what they seem. Yeah, and that is, yeah, that's very powerful. You know, uh, and it was slightly painful as well, because the idea of why do we behave the way we behave in certain circumstances, what pushes us over the edge, what, in circumstances we get involved in,
I think this is one of the things that I also really wanted to write about. I think a lot of us, when we read the newspapers, or you read about someone disappearing, or you see movies, of this, you're like, but I wouldn't do that. I would be so, I would be smart and rational, and I would just, and then I work with trauma psychology, and I know that people in crisis aren't necessarily that rational, and this was something, I also wanted to work with.
Yeah. Wow. Helene, it saddens me to have to stop our consultation, because I know we could talk so long about your book, and also about, those aspects that have informed the writing here. But again, I just want to thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. I hope this is the first of many chances we get to, to share time talking about writing, and ideas behind writing. It just remains for me to wish you all the very best with the release of The Therapist here in the UK. And until then, all the very best.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.